Many thanks everybody for joining for that fascinating webinar about navigating generational wealth, a deep dive into family offices. So I'm pleased to welcome today Peter Vogel and Alex Scott from Switzerland and the UK, and myself based in Brussels, Belgium, and we have Rebecca from the team calling from the United States. So briefly about Trusted Family. So as you all know, probably we are a leading governance and communication platform for family offices, family businesses. But we're more than a platform. We're also a place where we like to have thought leaders and people from the industry interact with one another and share their experience and connect the theory with practice. So very happy today to have Peter and Alex. For you to have some background information, although I'm sure that most of you know Peter and Alex at least by reputation. So Peter is a professor of family business and entrepreneurship and the director of the Global Family Business Center at IMD Business School. He works with a lot of family enterprises around the world, always on the plane. And if you follow him on LinkedIn, you will see that it's hard to know where Peter is. He authored the award-winning Family Philanthropy Navigator, and more recently, the Family Office Navigator. And he's a very well-known keynote speaker for a lot of conferences. He's also the founder of the Delta Venture Partners, and he's an associate partner of CFEG. Among a lot of recognitions, he's been awarded one of the top 100 family business influencers. And he was named as one of the world's best business school professors under the age of 40 2 years ago. And Peter lives in Switzerland with his wife and his 3 kids. Welcome, Peter, and thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Thanks, Edgar.
Because we wanted to give an academic perspective, but also to have a real example. We are very happy to have Alex calling from Cambria, from the UK. So Alex was born and schooled in Cambria. He graduated from Exeter College, Oxford, and hold also an MBA from IMD. First connection between Peter and Alex. So Alex was a chairman of Apereg, which was a private family-owned business, which was built on the foundations of a financial services group that was established more than 100 years ago by his great-grandfather. He founded and grew the Apereg portfolio of companies that included many organizations, including Sander, which was a London-based multifamily office that he founded in 1996, following the sales of Kendall-based Provincial Insurance. He then joined the Schroders family office as a chairman when Schroders acquired Sander. So what's going to be interesting is to see the evolving nature of the family office that Alex has navigated through the different steps of his journey. Alex is now the director of the Family Business Network International. And more recently, he was appointed His Majesty's Lord Lieutenant of the County of Cambria. He lives in Cambria, back to his roots with his wife, and they have 3 adult children, which I guess are not all with you in Cambria. Many thanks, Alex, for sharing your story today, and looking forward for the great discussion we'll have together. So please feel free to ask a lot of questions within the Q&A section. We'll take 15 minutes to listen to Peter, then we'll have Alex sharing his story, and then we'll open the floor to questions. You can also vote on the questions for us to be able to pick the ones that have more interest. Thank you so much. And Peter, the floor is all yours.
Super. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for joining. And good afternoon, good morning from wherever you're joining us, or good evening to those from Asia. Let me go straight in because we are relatively packed in time. I'm going to walk you through 15 minutes or so, brief introduction to the world of family offices and the work that we're doing, exploring some of the emerging trends that we see in the field of family offices, share some of the insights and the work that we do also together with the Family Business Network, some research and the publications we've done before we then go into Alex's story and case and the Q&A. Now, just to get going, and we always like to get a bit of a feeling for who's in the room. So we just have a small poll to start. I'll launch it here. So it's just a quick poll. You should see it popping up now. Do you or does your family have a family office? Yes, no, I don't know, or I'm not from an enterprising family. I'm a service provider. I'm a professional. I'm an academic. So I'll just keep it open for 5 seconds or so. We're already at 70%. That's great. So if you haven't clicked yet, please do so. And I'll close in 3, 2, 1. Okay, good. So you should see the results on screen now. Okay, so about 30% have a family office. About 40% are not from enterprising families, but academic or professionals, and the rest exploring. Super. Thank you so much. Again, this is just to, always it's good to get a feeling for who's in the room. Let's start. Before we go into the world of family offices, I want to start on a broader level, right? I want to talk about family enterprise systems first, because as you will see later, the role of family offices is very intimately connected to the world of family enterprise systems. And when we look at the evolutionary nature of these family enterprise systems, as we call them, or family enterprise ecosystems, you see that, of course, very often it logically starts with a founder or a group of founders that create companies. In this stage, the family business, the enterprise, the venture is relatively small. It's compact. It might be growing, but from a governance point of view, it's easy, centralized control by an individual or a small group of individuals, nothing too complicated. Then systems, as we progress into the world of family business, become a little bit more structured and more complex. We need more governance because we have the family circle, the ownership circle, the business circle. To many of you, this is a very well-known framework, the 3 circles, where, of course, we start to see multiple branches. We see dozens, if not hundreds, of family members and shareholders. We see a business or group of businesses. And of course, we need to start regulating things in a more nuanced way. And then in a later stage, we start to see what we call these large and dynastic family systems, where again, besides the legacy family business, we start to see portfolios evolving. That's also when very often we see family offices emerge, philanthropic foundations. And of course, there we have a large complexity in the system. Another way to portray these systems is with these 4 dimensions that we use when we also work with families. There's obviously on the top, the family system, which goes from the founder to siblings, cousins, dynastic families. There's to the right, the ownership system, from again, one individual controlling things, siblings, cousins, and then scattered ownership. There is on the left, the asset system, which of course starts with a business. You're an entrepreneur, you create a company, which then evolves to become more of a family business. Then you might evolve into a diversified family enterprise in a group, a portfolio, and a family office stage. And on the ownership side and the leadership and governance side, then ultimately who runs and operates these things, who governs these things, from owner-led all the way through to externally led. And you can imagine that as a result of that, we can start mapping out family systems in diverse ways, from very focused family systems, family enterprise systems, one business, one shareholder, one controlling owner, starting to think about his or her children and how to pass on control to the children, right? So this is the early stage of a family business story. And of course, we can perpetuate that a few generations down the road, where again, we can say, okay, 6th generation, 120 shareholders, we've built a portfolio of businesses. We've diversified away from our legacy business, which still forms a critical part of our portfolio, but we're much more diversified today, and a family office forms part of this equation. And of course, the system is much more complex. Why do I show this? Because again, these complexities relate very much to how these family enterprise systems function, right? And we talk about governance, and the ones we know very well in the family business space is, of course, the family ownership and business governance. And then when we now look at the family office aspect, we start to also include this investment governance piece. And what is important is, and that is where the role of family offices comes in, is to help manage these different governance rooms, these different governance aspects of a family system, and also to make sure that these are systematically connected and they talk to each other and they function together and are holistically aligned and connected. Now, what we see is in our work that an increasing number of families, because of these increasing complexities along those dimensions, are starting to leverage family offices to do certain jobs in their system, to help them manage these complexities, reduce complexities, take off some of the weight of their shoulders, beyond, of course, the financial aspect that many families let them deal with. We very much talk about total family wealth. This is an important concept, we believe, and it goes way beyond financial capital. So you see all these small acronyms there. When we say total family wealth, we talk about human capital, social capital, of course, financial capital, but also reputational capital, the culture in the family, intellectual, spiritual capital, and many, many other things. And this is really important because we believe that in order to thrive across generations, family enterprises and the systems need to look at all of these nuances of their ecosystem. Now, let me share a few definitions that are important that we believe every family needs to think about. And it will also speak a little bit to the narrative that we're using in our Family Office Navigator. On the one side, again, if we think about those dimensions, we talk about this family enterprise ecosystem that I already shared, which is a constantly evolving, changing, living and breathing organism, almost like a biological ecosystem, which is, by the way, also why we use this metaphor in the book of a living, breathing organism. Total family wealth, I elaborated on that already. This whole set of different capital endowments that make up this treasure chest of a family that is establishing over time and over generations. And then if we accept this metaphor that we're applying here of this ecosystem, then we can start saying, okay, and what is the job of a family office? First of all, what is a family office and what is the job of a family office then? Well, the thing is, a family office can be whatever you want it to be, right? There is no one size fits all. There is no one definition. The definition we apply is that a family office is a more or less formal, constantly evolving organization or private office that is dedicated to one or more wealthy individuals or families with a mandate to manage their total family wealth and other affairs in their system with the objective of continuing the heritage for generations to come, right? So there is a protective aspect, there is a nurturing aspect, and many, many other things that go way beyond just the investment aspect, which we oftentimes think of when we say family office. Now, let's do a quick glimpse into the world of family offices. So why have we seen such an incredible rise in family offices and debates of family offices in the last decades, I would say, and in particular the last few years? And we see four big themes that are driving this. One, it's a numbers game. There are simply more individuals and families that classify for reaching critical levels of wealth that would classify them to think about family offices. Asia is a big driver. Digital technology is a big driver. New wealth owners. Then, according to these four dimensions I shared before, we see that these family systems become more complex as well. Imagine this 120 shareholder family. They might be living in 30 different countries, exposed to different tax and legal regimes, and the world is becoming more and more complicated. So obviously, more and more families are looking for bespoke service entities that help them deal with their ecosystem in a bespoke way. Third, we see that the world of investments is also increasingly complex, and families are more and more interested in understanding how can we navigate this in a tailored way, whether it is getting more involved in direct deals, being more active in private equity, or even in some of the more risky, less conventional things around crypto, startups, SPACs, and all of these things. But we also see that there is a certain trendiness and glamour in the world of family office, and We also see that some families think about family offices also because there is a belief that a family office is the one thing you're missing, the stripe on the shoulder to finally have made it, right? So we also see that, and that is something where we also caution families to think twice before immersing themselves into the world of family offices. Without going into a historical lecture on this, the concept of family offices in an abstracted way has been around for a very long time. Of course, the family offices as we see them today are kind of emerging out of this third wave, with the Rockefeller family office, House of Morgan being some of the first official single family offices originally, then evolved some into multifamily offices. And this fourth wave, which we are in now since a few decades, I would argue, is where we see multifamily offices come up. We see digitalization, we see servitization of the family office industry, and a lot of other trends, which I think are very exciting and allow many families to participate in the family office space in a much more creative and entrepreneurial way. Now, if we look at some of these emerging trends that we see in this fourth wave, we see a lot of wealth landing in the hands of a different type of generation. I mean, obviously, it's always difficult to generalize on generations, but I think we would all collectively agree that Gen Z, digital natives, millennials think and act slightly different, obviously, and over time, from a global responsibility perspective. And hence, we see a lot of next-gen driven family offices thinking a lot about ESG, impact investing, thinking about purpose-driven asset allocation. So we see a big shift and a paradigm shift into system change and systemic investing. Obviously, one of the big themes that is also relevant for the family office space, but also the family enterprise space more broadly, is this increased levels of transparency and public visibility, which is a big driver of change. Governance, professionalization, digitalization of family offices, software solutions, I think those are big drivers, and we can discuss that a bit more later. And the other part that we see is the rise of hybrid forms of family offices, new, different, creative forms of family offices. So these are just a few of the themes that we see in this fourth wave. Now, we produced the Family Office Navigator in part because we saw the need for something like this. There's obviously literature out there on family offices, but it was very much focused on professionals or on the few family members that have experience in the financial space or others. But there was nothing really for the broad family. And there, because of this confusion, because of the increasing demand, we wanted to create something that is created for the entire family, to empower family members so that they're in the driver's seat and that they're not being driven by their family officers, which we see very often being the case. So just one slide on it to share a little bit what it's like. It's a tool, it's a framework, it's a guidebook, it's a playbook, it's a do book. So it's very hands-on, very practical, with frameworks that you can also download freely from the website, activities, insights, case studies. So it's very hands-on, very visual, very practical, which again was important for us when we did this. Also, in partnership with the Cambridge Family Enterprise Group and the Family Business Network. Now, when we just two more slides, and then we go right into Alex's story. But I do want to set the stage because, again, there is often a lot of confusion, again, about different types of family offices and what are they not, what could they be, and what could they look like. We see these three broad categories that you're most likely familiar with. Obviously, the single family office, the multifamily office, and then this more modern hybrid or virtual family office, where we say it's a family office as a service, or Uberization of family offices, where we start to try to bring together the best of both worlds from single and multifamily offices. Now, again, there are a lot of nuanced aspects and subcategories within each of them. You will get the slides, we'll share them, of course, so I will spare you with the details, but these are the three fundamental categories. And of course, as families emerge immerse themselves into the world of family office, one has to very carefully think about under what preconditions, what framework conditions, what system is the right one for the family. And that, of course, relates very much to what I showed in the beginning. Where do we have complexities? Are we a very large family with one business, or are we a small family with a portfolio of businesses? Are we globally scattered or not? So there's a multitude of dimensions to think about when it comes to choosing the right structures. Last one, just to show again and to come back to this evolutionary nature of family enterprise systems. This is what I showed before, where we see the complexity increasing on the different dimensions along the family enterprise ecosystem. And you can then very quickly imagine that a founder who has created significant wealth as a founder through an IPO or having sold the business that they created, the venture, the needs of an entrepreneur like that when it comes to a family office is very different than when we're talking about a family of 200-300 family members scattered across the globe with multiple assets. So as a result of that, we will also see very different shapes and forms of family offices, right? Where again, in this kind of controlling owner entrepreneurial stage, most likely we will see pure investment offices, because the job to be done is, I have liquidity that needs to be deployed, so I need to create bespoke services around that. Maybe I will have some add-on services, concierge, but not much more. In the family business stage, probably you will also see investment offices, but likely we will also see other type of services coming into the spotlight around, let's think about the development of our next generation. Let's think about what governance support we might need to keep the system together. We have some shared real estate. We need to plan this. Oh, what about our next family gathering? This is really a lot of work. Can somebody help us organize this, right? So we see all of these other services popping up. And then, of course, in these large dynastic families, this will look fundamentally different again. Now, I will just leave you with this one piece of saying family offices change their shape over time, over generations. These are dynamic, living, breathing organisms like ecosystems, like the biological ecosystem that I was showing before. And this I would like to use as a segue also into the story that Alex will share from their family, because you will see obviously how this family enterprise has evolved and adopted over time and over generations, and as a consequence also how their family office is constantly changing and in shape and form. Alex, over to you.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Really fascinating presentation, and rather a shock to me to see how neatly we fit into some of your academic models. One always thinks you're making it up as you go along and everything is terribly individualistic, and then you see, oh, I just fit exactly into there. So this story, I think, will take us through a multi-generational family, through the evolution into family office, and actually onto our current state where we're more of a hybrid family office. So things have evolved. So please bear with me. I'm not going to show you. I just muted myself by mistake, sorry. Let's move on. Okay, every family has a history. Here's 91 years of history in one slide. All you need to know is that I'm the generation 4, that my ancestors created a property casualty insurance company, that it was mid-sized UK. And as you can see, it produced some nice advertisements for the early days of motor vehicles. And those of you who recognize the picture bottom left, it was closely advised by John Maynard Keynes. Interesting side story. So by the time I got involved, here we have the family, the sort of scale and size that Peter's been describing. So we're about 90 people, including partners. I was appointed to lead the business 30 years ago, and really expecting to be part of the evolution of this long-held family business. But what I found was a business that was in the process of being disrupted. Here we go. Again, I'm not going to take you to the detail of this, but the business is being disrupted. I didn't even know the term disruption at the time, but the competitive landscape was changing dramatically. It was beginning to change the way that we would distribute our business, the way we would manage our business. And with a long-held family business, 2,000 white-collar employees across the UK, plus a scattering all over the world, there wasn't necessarily the appetite to change the shape of the business so dramatically, because we probably were employing, in my view, by the time I got involved, possibly twice as many people as we would need in the new environment. At the same time, the rules were changing, and European companies were suddenly allowed to insure cross-border. We were the last remaining sizable, reputable, privately held insurance company left in the UK, and it won't surprise you that we had plenty of suitors who were talking to us. I felt that the timing was opportune, and therefore we engaged with purchasers, and we sold eventually to the French company UAP, which subsequently merged with AXA. So when you see the AXA operation in the UK, that is part of who we are. Important that I describe the rationale for the exit. Why did the family stay together? Because it was a strategic decision. Because we felt that we would do better together to continue together, but it was important that we kept our capital together in order to continue to preserve our family capital, which is what we felt we were responsible for. The critical element there was I didn't know what a family office was. It certainly wasn't a fashionable thing to do. It was only by going to the USA that I got introduced to people and I got a sense of what we might be able to do with the family office. And as I was at a stage in my life, I wanted to develop a new business. It was a logical thing for me to think to look at a multifamily office and develop that as well. Just want to quick, Peter's really just touched on this slide here. If you look at the top line there, that's the theory. You can see, as he's described, entrepreneurs become intrapreneurs, become portfolio builders. And then interestingly, right at the end of it, you've got the option for people to become entrepreneurs again, possibly because the original business has reached the end of its value creating stage. And that was the same. If you look at the bottom line there, that was exactly the model that happened to us. We had the original insurance company. Prolific was an asset management company. Exeter Bank was another organization that we purchased over the years. So it turned into a financial service conglomerate. Then we exited all of those. And then I started again with the entrepreneurial initiatives there that you can see below. So that's just a sort of the theory and practice. The bottom line is what we did, and the top line is what we did as a family. The next slide, very quickly. Peter's already touched on this. This is just a slightly simplified version. But I saw my job over 30 years as not just primarily growing the family assets. That was the obvious job. But also in a large, complex family group of ensuring we kept unity, ensuring we had a unification of purpose, and ensuring that we were nurturing talent as well. So keeping those three in balance is obviously the differentiation, as we all know, as this whole audience knows, the differentiation between being responsible for a family business and being responsible for one that is not. So what did we do? Blank sheet of paper, financial service was the obvious place that we would start. And here you can see that we became entrepreneurs again. All new activities. This is a 30-year progression in the financial services sector, primarily wealth management. We had to manage our own wealth. And over time, I grew that to manage wealth for another 20 plus families. We also moved into fund administration on the right-hand side. That was a new business. We thought it was an opportunity. We were frustrated by the quality of the service in the marketplace, so we created our own company there. We moved into real estate, and we moved into next generation education. So just a classic entrepreneurial activity. But what I had the advantage of was obviously family capital behind us to enable these businesses to evolve. The same circumstances came to us again. I felt that at the end of 2019, I was increasingly beginning to believe that the business we'd created would require significant capital in order to take it forward, that I thought the risks of being in that business were increasing, and I thought the returns on our capital were going to be less interesting from a future perspective. I was approached by Schroders. I no longer work there, but I did work there, having sold the business to them. We negotiated and rolled that business into Schroders. However, we have kept a family office, but we delegate a certain amount of our assets to that company as a result of the sale. So 2 sales, but the family itself has kept unified throughout that. So I'm now going to touch on a bit of the elements of operating within the family. What do we do to keep this family together? That's giving you the commercial background. And we'll now move on, and I want to show you where the family's got to now. One slide further on from that. So all this that's the same graph, but what I've done here is I've sliced it by generation. And you can see the green part of generation, that's my children's generation. They weren't even born when we had this original business. So their connection is entirely with what we do now. But equally, it's very clear who I'm working for. I'm the yellow generation 4 there. But what we need to think about, what we need to operate, and how we need to behave is to ensure that we're meeting the needs of generation 5 and 6. In fact, my kids are in generation 5. So how do we manage that? Well, it's a process of generation. I think every multi-generational family business has something similar to this. The left-hand colored boxes are operating companies where we have standard boards, and you'd expect them to be subcommitted. You'd expect some subsidiaries to be in place and to be appropriately governed, particularly because it's a financial services company and you have fiduciary responsibilities. Right-hand side, classic family council, managing family gatherings, educating people. In the center, we have a specific council where we bring together, that's the family council to the right is an inclusive forum. Anyone can go, everyone's welcome. The shareholder advisory council in the middle is an exclusive forum where we actually want one representative from each of the prominent branches. So we can get 80–90% of the ownership of a company into one room. And that, to me, that's leveraging on one of the critical advantages of a family, that you can get all the people who count in the room at the same time. You can hear the good things, you can hear the bad things, the difficult things, and talk about the challenges and agree to the chief executive's articulation of where we're going, so we can make decisions quickly and we can move quickly. So that was imposed as a critical way to be able to move, to enable this multi-generational, multi-shareholder business to continue to be agile. What does that look like in person? Well, there we are. Taken 3 years ago. You can see the generational mix. You can't see it too clearly. Lots of children. I found myself on the front bench with the old guys, which is what I'd never expect to be, because in my head, I'm not one of them. But we do that every 2 years. It's a critical element of connecting. We don't talk much about business. It's about culture. It's about values. It's about spending good times together. So that's how we work out who we are and how and why we're connected. You're going to get these slides, so I'm not going to roll through them. But interaction, communication, connection, delegation, really important. So one of the things that I think has been most important to us, and you've probably picked this up on this story, is our ability to respond to change. Also, that we've taken, I haven't really stressed this, but the fact we take governance really seriously. It's important that it's done properly. It's important we have external people helping us. It's important that we diffuse any family issues. And it's important that we work with high quality professional people. Right at the end of myself being succeeded, because I have now been succeeded, so I've been a successor and I've been succeeded, I thought it would be really important to be able to articulate what it is we're trying to do. Is this just about money? And I've got a 3-minute video, which, if you forgive me, I'm going to show you, and then I'm just about going to wrap up after that. But it's what we created, private video for the family, just to articulate, to show and explain to people what it is we're trying to do and why it is we stay together. So, Edgar, we can, I don't think I'm in control of these slides. I think you are. You're doing a brilliant job. Nor the most intelligent, but the ones most adaptable to change. I think this applies to families. Not seeing the video.
Oh, you're not seeing the video. Sorry. Okay.
If it's not going to work, here we go. Okay. Charles Darwin said, "It's not the strongest of species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most adaptable to change."
I think this applies to families and businesses too. Every generation has a choice to build on its inheritance and seek to be good stewards, or to harvest the work of its ancestors. We've chosen to keep building. Our family has a history of being successful in business, with financial capital created over a century. Multiple generations have flourished with a spirited combination of entrepreneurialism, patience, adaptation, and energy. We've evolved our businesses in response to change, from cotton milling to insurance to financial services, surviving and thriving. And we should be proud of and motivated by what's been achieved and the transitions made, because multi-generational family entrepreneurship is rare. And what lies at the core of our achievements? I think it's purposeful stewardship. This is why we're in business, how we have endured. This is our purpose. Purposeful stewardship is about leveraging the achievements of the past, making the most of our good fortune. It means managing our balance sheet of both financial and human assets. This is the glue that holds everything together. Together we're better, and together we are stronger. Through our purpose, we can enable enduring financial security and build a growing and robust enterprise. Purposeful stewardship is a powerful collective guiding aspiration. Together, we can make a greater impact on the future of our families, our communities, and issues in society that matter most to us all. Now, we look to the future. It's time for the next generation of our family to assume more involvement. There will be a change in leadership, but the mission remains the same: purposeful stewardship. The next generation is ready and able to take up the challenge and drive forward our family story, building on what has already been achieved.
So thanks, Edgar. If you can go forward 2 slides, then I'll conclude there. So we've got lots of time for, it's the one with the circles on it. One more. Great, thank you. Just want to explain that. So I produced that at a time of being succeeded by my cousin. We'd been through a process. Importantly, we'd made that an objective process. We'd involved non-family owners in assessment and selection of my successor, although it won't surprise you that I was influential and had strong opinions, but it was important that the process was objectively fair. I just want to tell you where we are today, because this is my articulation of our hybrid model, which is something that Peter was talking about. So where we are today is we have one investment vehicle, or main investment vehicle, called Stramingate. That's where we outsource. That's our long-term absolute return with, and we deliver index-linked dividends to the family out of that. We've outsourced that. And that is the main element that's outsourced to Schroders. That is run now on an entirely sustainable basis, which is, again, it's been driven by the values of the inheriting generation, and that's a really important part of our purpose and our glue. The center piece of pie there is what remains of our family office, and that's where we're focusing specifically on where we think we can add value, where we think we have specific domain knowledge, and that's now run by my cousin. We're making direct investments there into multiple businesses, startups in the large. So that's our main risk capital there, although we do private equity in the endowment capital as well. And then finally, there's the other piece that every family will have, is where our assets have been diversified because of distributions, because of other funds, or small business sales, etc., where we have completely separate assets. Philanthropy, which is mentioned in one of the elements of Peter's slide, is actually done outside and by the individual family branches, because they prefer to articulate their own values through their philanthropic activities. So the core is what we're doing now as a family, focusing on a few small things, and where we don't think we're adding enough value as a family, we're outsourcing those. I think that's where I'll pause, if that's all right, because it allows us time for questions, and I can share the slides with you, but I think that the other slides are self-explanatory, so I think we'll stop there.
Great. Thank you so much. I mean, Edgar, I mean, I think we can both jump in probably and ask questions. Also, to everybody from the audience, if you have questions, just please put them in the Q&A. There were already a few that I answered directly live in the chat. Edgar, if it's okay for you, I would like to kick off with one question for Alex. Because I think what is really, really interesting here, and I think it fits really, really nicely also with what we've observed in general, and also with what we look at more in the framework logic, is this ever-changing nature of it. And to say, well, the family changes, the landscape of asset changes, the needs change. And as a result of that, also the nature of your family office, whatever that is, changes as well. There is a job to be done. And as a result of that, it evolves. And in 94, you had a liquidity event, then you set up a single family office. It was logical. And then the logical next step was to convert that into a multifamily office. And that became your new family business, essentially, which we also hear sometimes from families, especially ones like yours, where there is a lot of financial expertise inside the family, that this actually becomes a business. And then again, it became something, and then you had another liquidity event, and you carved out parts of strategic parts that you still do. And today you are essentially in this hybrid model that we think is highly effective. So I think this is great. Now, do you see where do you see also the advantages now of this kind of hybrid model as compared to, let's say, in the past when it was a pure single family office, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't realized until I saw your slides how closely we modeled that pattern, actually. So I think that let's go back. I mean, when I started the business, this I could understand. I got through my MBA education that asset allocation was everything in terms of the long-term returns of an investment portfolio. I knew that I needed this thing. I needed multiple skills to deliver that to us. I needed multiple managers, what we now call open architecture, the ability to access managers over the world. Nobody was selling that to me at the time. This was 1994. Everybody was very in-house focused. Very few organizations, if any, focused primarily on asset allocation and secondary on manager selection, the two most important things you can do. So I felt I had to create a business to do that. Now, 30 years on, loads of people are doing that. Those services available in the marketplace. So why would I wouldn't build it now, because there's great services out there. So in essence, I mean, partly one of the decisions that I decided to sell the business was I thought that our commercial edge had been eroded because the market had changed, and I felt that we could access the things we needed, and that we ought to focus on things where we felt we could add value, where we felt we had some domain knowledge, and where we thought there were some inefficiencies in the marketplace. So it made sense to focus on those things. So it feels like we've been through this evolution. And I just come back to that element of change. I think this element, I mentioned the perspective from an evolutionary angle is I think it's what we know is there's the species, the families, the individuals who respond better to change are the ones that endure. And I think that's what we've had to keep on doing all the time. And that, finally, is the great advantage of being a family business, or the opportunity we have to leverage, which is to look forward and anticipate change. We don't have to focus quarter by quarter, but our job and our opportunity is to look forward and anticipate change and take action before that hits us in a way that's uncomfortable.
Yeah. No, I think this is really great. I mean, this evolutionary nature, right, which I think is just good practice anyway. But I think you also made a really, really valid point, an important point now that you say today, if you had that first liquidity event today, with the knowledge that you have today, you probably wouldn't go down the path of a single family office. Again, you would already immediately operate more in this hybrid logic of having some core services in the house and then work with these service ecosystem providers that are here that back then were just not that readily available. I think that is a big lesson, and something we also see and advise a lot of families to do is to be smart. Then, of course, the big next question is, well, how do you pick and choose your partners and the service providers? Because there are so many, and how do you know that they're the right ones? But that's a whole debate in itself for a whole different webinar.
Critical skill. And yeah, I'd agree with you. It's very clear to me that we can all view our lives in hindsight, but I can definitely look back now and I could say I definitely wouldn't do what I had to do, in my view, 30 years ago. Wouldn't do that now. I wouldn't need to.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Let's take the questions from the room. So we have Peter Luigi Parmigiani asking, how do you leverage Alex as a new blood, the partners, the plus ones, skills and competences, for the family?
I've understood the question. Hello, Pierluigi. Can't see you, but it's nice to hear from you. How do we leverage the skills and competences in the families? Well, that's what we're doing through our focused single family office now. So my successor is a successful entrepreneur in one particular sector. And what we are doing is because we've sold the operating business, as the blank sheet of paper and capital that he now has. So we can pursue his expertise and his domain experience and deploy capital through him and his network. So we're leveraging that, and part of his job is to ensure, again, my little triangle, his job is to be highly alert and attuned to other talents and opportunities within the family. So that generation, there are 36 of them, and there's already, I think, about 40 in the generation to follow that. That to me is both a management issue, thank you, trusted family, but it's also an opportunity to find people with great talent and great ideas. So that's a management job, and that's another aspect of running the family business now, is to be aware of where the skills lie, and that's his job now, not mine.
Wonderful.
Hope I've answered the question.
Thank you so much. We have another question from Patricia Saputo asking whether the family office should be seen as a new business, a bit as what you created, Alex, or as more of a service center to the family members who may not have themselves the ability to manage wealth.
Well, Peter may have a view on this. Let me start by saying I was 34 years old, and it wasn't, and actually as a family, you know, we didn't have enough critical mass of capital, in my view, to create a business that was dynamic enough to retain the talent we needed to keep. So my perspective then was, in order to attract, retain, incentivize the right people, we needed to be a growing business, and so it was a kind of rational thing to do, to create a business that was a business rather than just a service. But again, we were having to sort of invent how to outsource things then. I don't think you'd have to do that now. So I think that was a rational thing to do then, to create a business. And for the family, it was good because it was continuity. But I think what we do now is we're deploying our capital into owning other businesses. It doesn't need to be a business. But a final point, and Peter may have a perspective on this, but I think in terms of family glue, family connection, and the ability and the desire to continue together, having an entity that is more than a family office is just more interesting. So if you've got prominent stakes in businesses, you can talk about what they're doing, you can meet the people who are running them. It's much more tangible to disparate shareholders than a pot of capital. It's much more interesting. So having something, I think it's important it has been for our family, to own something of a business. It might not be the family office. It doesn't matter if it's a small business, but having something where you can witness, experience, and engage with the thrills and spills of really running a business and being owners is a good discipline. So I haven't really answered the question, because I would do things differently, but I hope that helps.
Yeah, if I can add, I think you elaborated on it very nicely. I mean, I think what we see is that we see, in fact, both. We see, and I think it depends on a number of factors. For different families, it will feel very different. And as a result of that, will also be executed differently. And I think one of the decisive, let's say, forks in the road is, do you still have your legacy business or not? If, like in your case, you sell your legacy business, but as a family, you decide to stay together and do things together as an enterprising family, then I think it's relatively natural that whatever you create will then naturally become a new family business, let's say, because it becomes this glue that you're saying, this new identity, source of belonging, the place to meet, even sometimes physically.
Yep.
Whereby in other cases, we have families where they still have their legacy business, and that is their root identity, their cause of being together, the reason for the annual family meeting. And then the family office is a pure service entity with a very specific, sometimes very narrow job to be done, which oftentimes doesn't even service the whole family. So it's a pure service entity that is even completely disconnected from the core identity, purpose-giving family business. So I think it can be both, and there's space for both in the ecosystem, and it very much depends on each family's constellation. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And just to say, explain that video, which I hope wasn't too self-indulgent in showing you, that was again my reflection. We don't have this business. So what is it? We do have a business, but it's relatively small compared to our assets. What is it? And we came up with this term. We want to be good stewards. We want to be purposeful stewards. We want to understand why we're doing it, because that was a kind of replacement for there isn't this great company with a great brand and a product we're proud of. So it's just another layer of trying to articulate to the family as to why it's a good thing to stay together.
Thank you so much. We have an interesting question from Joachim Vandel, and which relates to the total family wealth that Peter, you came up with. The question is, to which degree family offices actually actively manage the non-financial assets of families, like the know-how, the networks, the reputation, and how can these family offices leverage these to be able to, train and educate and incubate the next generation of family ventures? Thanks a lot, Joachim, for that brilliant question.
Alex, should I start and then you?
Please go.
Okay.
Yeah, give me time to think about this.
Yeah. I think it's a great question. And again, also the reason why we use this relatively broad framing of total family wealth, and we talk about all of these different types of capital endowments, is because we also want to invite families to think broader. And the interesting thing is, I'll give you an anecdote. We're working with a family of 500 shareholders and on the next generation education. And I remember this one module where we were sitting in the classroom, and I was talking about family offices, and I just asked them a simple question. I said, well, do you have a family office? They were like, well, we're not so sure, and so on. And they did not have a family office in the classical wealth management way. There was no entity managing the family's wealth or anything, but they have an entity that was our counterpart to organize this family education program, and that is organizing all the family gatherings and working on family unity and servicing the portal, the trusted family type of portals and networks. And I told them, yes, and your family office is actually sitting in the back of the room back there. And everybody turned around. There was this one individual sitting there who's employed by the family and doing all of that, but they don't invest any money together yet, right? So they only do human capital, social capital, reputational capital things, but they don't do any financial capital. So I think absolutely, and that's also what we would strongly encourage families to think about. How can you leverage, if you have a family office, how can you leverage that? Now, last point that I want to make on this is, we sometimes see families struggling to do both under one umbrella, where you might have an investment office which does the financial part, and the sole purpose of that is to maximize returns or whatever investment policy you have or KPIs. And then there's the family side, and it's not always easy to do both under one umbrella. But let's say in an abstracted sense, you can do a dotted line around both and call that the family office.
Yeah, there's just one thing I'd add to that, Peter, because I agree with that. I'm sort of pausing on this question because in some respects, yes is the answer. The family office has an opportunity to leverage this extraordinary network of influence and contacts and opportunities that a large family has created. On the other hand, I think one of the greatest challenge for inheritors of substantial fortunes is to achieve their own agency and to achieve their own sense of achievement and their own purpose and their individual success. So you know, I think the worst thing would be to rely on the family office to do everything for you. The worst thing a family could do would be to rely on a family office to everything. So I think, you know, in my family, we all do our own philanthropy very individually and very separately. We all have our own careers, apart from me, because I've been focused on the family so much. So that yes and no. I think a family has an opportunity to leverage. So family office has an opportunity to leverage, but equally, giving the family members space and time to go off and be themselves and develop and become highly functioning individuals. That's a critical part of the management of the family balance sheet as well as the human talent. And so the risk of relying too much on the family office for all this, I think, is a serious one. It's really important that people develop and evolve outside that context, or they would become ciphers for the family and not have their own agency. And I'd add the organization Horizons that we helped start, and my cousin runs it, is very much focused on that the individual development for individuals who've got substantial assets behind them.
Thanks a lot, Alex. Indeed, important to also define the limits of what the family office is there for. Thank you so much. We'll have 3 questions pending and 2 minutes left. If the audience wants to vote on which question should be picked last, that would be a good way to select the remaining question. So we have 1 vote for Lizette's question for now. All right, so the last question would be the one from Lisette. Thank you very much. If, you know, that's more about the process of setting a family office. So let's say there is a liquidation event of a legacy family business. High level, Alex, what were, you know, the milestones of the course of action in establishing your family office?
Well, first of all, do you have unity of purpose as a family? Quite often, so I'm assuming there's been an exit. If there's been an exit, families can exit the business for different reasons. Sometimes it's strategic reason and they're very coherent. So as a group, you've got the good basis to move forward. Sometimes families exit a business because they no longer agree about the direction or even being in a family business together. That's not a good basis for establishing a family office. So first of all, do you have the consistency and do you have a sense of purpose? Secondly, have you worked out what the money's really for? Have you worked out how this is going to, what is it you want to do with this? And this may be key, free cash flow from a large business, in which case the consideration is slightly different. So a sense of purpose, a sense of direction. And again, 30 years ago, I had to go out and it was hard to meet people. And there's loads of info, there's loads of conferences, there's loads of consultants, loads of business schools who can help you frame your ideas. So do the research, do lots of research. Don't move in a hurry. Do lots of research. Work out what works for you, because again, every family office will be, as I think Peter's been saying, will be constructed around the needs of the individual family.
Yeah, if I could just add 2 things, I think you said it all. I think, but I want to stress the last point that you made, and don't move in a hurry. I think this is so essential, because I think many families that we see also in our programs, they come because they had or will have a liquidity event, and what we sense very often is kind of a bit of a stress, because it's uncomfortable, it's unfamiliar to, you know, maybe you have a 100-year-old legacy business. The cash was always bound in that business, and suddenly you have that liquidity, and you're not used to that, and you might feel uncomfortable, especially in the last few years with high interest rates, inflation rates. So what do? We need to deploy the capital very, very quickly. What do we do? And then families very often make very costly mistakes in those first steps. So taking the time to reflect, to educate, to have meaningful conversations as a family, to align on also risk propensity, risk profile. As you said, aligning on the purpose. What do we want to achieve? What does good look like for us? What do we want this to look like in 20 years from now? To avoid some costly mistakes. And I think a few months of reflection are not wasted time.
I just add to that, Peter. One of the realizations that we didn't, well, I had, but I don't think the wider family had, is when you go from a single company, you go from a single stock portfolio, very high risk. I mean, you know the company and everything, but single stocks companies can go badly wrong very quickly. you move to a highly diversified portfolio, your risks have changed completely. And as your risks have changed completely, you do have time. I mean, you may just be in cash, that's not a high risk. But as you deploy your assets, you've got time, and you've got time to think about and explore about what it is you want to do and what actually matches your skills. And as a family, if you had a liquidity event, if you had an exit, you've probably got tremendous knowledge about one or two sectors. You've probably got an amazing network within that. There may be opportunities that you may be able to exploit. You've always wanted to, but you've had this big operating company. Maybe that again, coming back to what we're trying to focus on now, is you may decide to think about there are some specific areas and specific knowledge we have and opportunities that we can leverage. Let's focus on those with a small proportion, and let's just outsource the rest of it, because we're not going to add much value there. But that takes time to think about. It takes time to explore. Don't rush.
Wonderful. That's a perfect conclusion to our webinar. Thank you so much, Peter and Alex. It was extremely insightful. Thank you all for joining. Stay tuned for the next Trusted Family webinars. We try to have high-level and very insightful participants like Peter and Alex every time. Thank you very much, and have a lovely rest of your day.